So I think it's important over to the speakers. And the first one is John Enevoldson, and I'd invite him to come up on stage. John. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
There's the clicker.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. It's a lot of you. It's great to be here. As the chairs mentioned, we had some issues at TFL today, like another time. But I'll be talking about data, AI, and tokens. So I was also asked to do a little introduction about blockchain for those who are pretty new to this industry and everything. So I'll be talking about that, and then getting into a bit more of Ocean Protocol, which is the project I work for, which is building a decentralized data services ecosystem, and why it's important to have that. Cool. So let's start with blockchain. The blockchain is a decentralized ledger technology, DLT. And it's a new way of storing data, so adding rows of data to a certain block, hence the name blockchain, and adding those blocks in a chain, and so that it's like immutable, and you have a very good trace of auditability and everything. But more importantly, it's a gathering confluence of different technologies, right? Around cryptography technologies, around proof. You've heard maybe of proof of work for Bitcoin. I'll talk a bit more about that afterwards. Consensus mechanisms, decentralizations. Now, all those technologies are not new. They didn't came with Bitcoin, right? They existed before, but that was the beauty of Bitcoin. The most famous white paper in blockchain, it was Blockchain 1.0. It was to gather all those different technologies and make them work together to create blockchain, this technology we know right now. So there's a new way of exchanging, storing data. In the case of Bitcoin, it's like storing value, right? So you own maybe 5 Bitcoins, something like that, and then you basically send 2 Bitcoins to one of your friends, and you don't need any trusted third party on to have this exchange. It does like basic functionalities very well, exchanging money, Bitcoins in this case, value over to someone else. That works great, apart maybe for the energy consumption. I'll talk a little bit more after that about that. And then we moved to Blockchain 2.0, and that was a few years afterwards. It was maybe the second most famous blockchain white paper. It was on Ethereum, and I guess most of you have heard about Ethereum. Well, Ethereum brought this concept of smart contracts. Right, using blockchain technology, instead of just exchanging value like Bitcoin overload, you can exchange and run code, right? So writing a smart contract, everyone, and then under certain conditions, this code will be executed. It allowed new things, beautiful things. So EVM here stands for Ethereum Virtual Machine, which is kind of like the framework in which the smart contracts are being run. And then you can execute code, you can create DAOs, which stand for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, which is a very cool concept. If we have time at the end, I'll talk a little bit about that, and all the cool stuff. And that is the new, very important Blockchain 2.0. This is the one I know some of the speakers afterwards are going to mention more smart contract. And this is very exciting. So, if you're new to that, I really encourage you to read more about smart contracts. Cool. Let's talk about AI, another very buzzword for tonight. Now, AI is very interesting, right? It's very important. You use it every day nowadays, whereas when you're using your phone, when facial recognitions, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's important, we've had like this kind of explosion of AI in the past few years, right? And you can see that in that graph, which is, I love that chart, by the way. So I'm going to talk very quickly about that. On the left side, right, it is, so on the x-axis, so the horizontal one, on the left side, it is like a small data set. And on the right side, it's a large data set. What do I mean by data set? Now, in AI, to be very simplistic, you have an algorithm, and you train this algorithm on a certain data set, right? And the result that you have is an AI. Now, you have like 4 different algorithms that you have, like 4 different charts, right? And they basically, the y-axis, the vertical axis, is the precision of this algorithm. So the higher, the better. Now, what happened is that if you look at like when you have very small data sets, and that was like maybe 20 years ago or something, they're not really great. There's under 85% precision. It's not great. You can't really do any business product with that. And they're all kind of different, right? Like they all perform differently. Now, the more to the right you go, so the larger data set, what happens is that the precision really increases, right? It goes up to like 98, 99%. Like you can really start using that. And what's great though, the one thing to notice is that they all, pretty much all of them converge. What that means is that the algorithm itself, it's not the most important part anymore for the AI. The most important part is the size and the quality of the data set you train your AI on. And that creates a problem, right? It creates a problem because like this data that we have, it's become this new oil that was from The Economist last year, I think. And what that means is that companies that have more data and also more compute to train the model, they get more accuracy. And more accuracy in today's world means more money. Very simple example, Google, right? The more accurate they have in delivering ads to you, the more money they can charge for those ads and more money they make. So then you have all those like, platforms, Google, Facebook, Uber, Amazon, Microsoft, a lot of them. Tencent in China is another one. And what happens is that your data becomes siloed. All your personal data, and we've seen that recently with Facebook in the past few weeks, sadly, all your data is siloed because for them, that's exactly where they get their wealth from, right? We're using your data, they can train better algorithms, they can make more money. And like, how can we solve that? At Ocean Protocol, we're trying to build a decentralized, no third party that you have to trust, no central authority, to link the companies that have a lot of data, that want to leverage it, and the companies that need this data, AI startups. But that creates, core problem. This is from Lawrence Lonnie Bryan. It's from Adelaide Ventures, based out of London. And he said, like, okay, the data is siloed. I talked a little bit on that. And there's no economic incentive to share, which is exactly what was mentioned in the introduction, right? What is the economic incentive? Now I'm going to talk about its two parts really like quickly and see like how Ocean Protocol we're trying to fix those problems. First one, how do we erode those silos? Well, instead of siloing the data, what if we pull this data? What if we make it more available to those different AI startups right there? What that means that like more companies, more AI startups can have more data and more accuracy, and everyone can make more money. An interesting concept is the better and more data you have from healthcare, the more precise your healthcare models can be. That means you can, spot diseases way earlier and have better treatments. So it's very important for like companies, AI startups to have access to data, right? It's changing the world, and in most cases in a good way. So we need to encourage that. Now you have lots of companies in the world, enterprises, they have lots of data. Banks and shipping companies, logistic companies, healthcare hospitals, everything, they have tons and tons of data. They've been like storing this data for a long time, but they're not doing anything with it. For different reasons, they don't have the skills, they don't have the time, they don't have the incentive. So they just have this data. I think the stat is that 90% of data produced last year will never be analyzed, or something like that. It's crazy when you think about it. On the other side, you have lots of like AI companies that have the skills, they have the algorithms, they have the time, they might have the funding, but they don't have access to the data. So without data, they can't do anything. And there's a little bit intersection there, and those are the companies I mentioned earlier. Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Tencent, Baidu in China, everything. They have tons of data. They have the people and the skills to like use this data. Ocean, how do we like try to solve that? Well, Ocean would be like this connecting layer on top of which you would have data marketplaces. DM stands for data marketplaces. You would have lots and lots and lots of them, those data marketplaces that will like make available this data from those enterprises that can sell their data to those AI startups, can be connected, use this data to create a model. Now, really quickly, this would be like very simplistically work in a similar way as Sabre and Amadeus. I don't know if you heard about Sabre and Amadeus. Huge companies that you might have never heard of, but you use them pretty much every month, maybe every week if you travel a lot. Those are companies that store all the data about airfares, airlines, and everything, meaning that if you go on Kayak, or if you go on Priceline, or Expedia and whatnot, and you try to book a flight, London to Paris, for example, and you buy seat 5E, as soon as you buy it and you go on another website, this seat won't be available. That means all those websites that you use, they tap into Amadeus and Sabre all the time, so that it's consistent. So it would be this kind of connecting layer similar to Sabre and Amadeus, connecting all those data marketplaces. Cool. Now let's go to like economic incentive to share. This is my favorite part, and this is for me one of the most interesting part about blockchain. One that I haven't mentioned yet because I'm keeping it for this part. For me, the most interesting one. It's the superpower of blockchain, right? Is you get people to do stuff and by rewarding them with tokens. Think about it. You have people all around the world. They don't know each other. They don't trust each other. But they're all working towards a same common goal. And why do they do that? Well, because you reward them with tokens when they act the way you want them to act, with good behavior. Example, Bitcoin, right? All of you have heard about Bitcoin. I talked a little bit about that at the beginning. Well, the goal of Bitcoin is to maximize the security of the network, is to make it very, very hard to roll back any transaction. When I send to my friend 2 Bitcoins and it goes onto the Bitcoin blockchain, it will never change. Why will it never change? Because you're forcing people to, do work. It's called proof of work. Like they have to run computation on their machines to like mine this new block. What that means is that if you wanted to roll back a transaction, you wanted to change it, you wanted to cheat the system, you need an immense amount of power and compute and energy to actually do that. And right now it's impossible with Bitcoin. I mean, in theory it's possible, but in reality it's impossible. That's the objective function, right? You want to maximize security of network. Here security is compute power, proof of work. Therefore, it's super expensive to roll back the changes. And what do you do when people actually do a lot of work to maximize the security of the network? You give them Bitcoins, money. You reward them. So everyone is trying to compete to maximize that security. Now, Ocean. So normally, I've given this presentation a few times. I go a bit more details in terms of math, the formulas and everything. So if anyone has questions afterwards, you can email me. I'll read our new white paper. So I'm going to go very quickly on that. Well, we started with who are the stakeholders of Ocean Protocol? The people who provide the data, right? They're the ones who put the data sets, make them available. But you have also the people who are going to refer the services on the data. I'm going to go a little bit into that afterwards. So the people who verify, like on the blockchain to make sure everything is correct. The consumers of the data and the keepers of the network, making sure the blockchain runs well. Now, what happens with that is that they all have different value they provide and they have different things they want in return. How do you design, it's called token engineering. How do you design a token that basically makes all of these people happy and work together towards a common goal? Well, our objective function, Bitcoin was maximize security of network. Ours is to maximize the supply of relevant data. It means that we want to have accessible to all those AI companies relevant data, and a lot of it, and everything. Now, we reward the people on the network with our tokens if they supply this data and they curate it. So I could go for half an hour and how do we do this curation. There's very interesting concepts about curation markets, token curated registries. I encourage all of you to read about that. It's very interesting, is basically using those tokens, people are incentivized to go around Ocean Protocol, discover new data sets, gauge them. Is it interesting? Is it relevant? Is it a good data set? And if it is, basically make it discoverable for everyone. The way it works is they will be staking the tokens, right? By staking the tokens, they have skin in the game. They think this data set is actually great for other people. They're going to put their money where their mouth is. And if they're right, if the data set is actually very popular, they get a lot in return. So that's how we kind of using this, this concept of curation and data. So to go a little bit about Ocean, it would be, it's a protocol. So that means that you can build services on top of it. All the services could be plugged in and everything. There's potential services, right? Not all of them. You might know some of them. Ogre or Golem are pretty famous blockchain companies. Based, I think, some of them is in Berlin, Tribit, Cosmos, Polkadot, and everything. They all provide a different service around governance, around interoperability between different blockchains, privacy, with Enigma and NuCypher and everything. Being a protocol, the great thing is that people can build their own services, or they can link their own services on top of Ocean Protocol to make this amazing ecosystem and with this community. And that's why we're building Ocean Protocol as open source. The code is going to be available on the internet, on GitHub, for those who are a bit technical, and everyone can contribute to it. Everyone can build the services and comment, and like, oh, this is good, we should be working on that, etc., etc. And by doing that, we're creating a beautiful community, a beautiful ecosystem that will allow us to unlock data for AI. And what does that mean? I'm going to go in a few use cases to finish. Well, we had this like proof of concept. We worked with Toyota Research Institute, where we built a marketplace, decentralized one, where car making companies could share data about their miles driven. You overheard about driverless cars. Uber is doing it. Tesla is doing it. All the companies are doing it. Well, now to have like proper driverless cars, you need to have a huge amount of data about like hundreds of millions of miles driven in any weather, any place in the world, with any kind of car and everything, so these models can be trained on this data. Now, one car company can maybe do it in like 20, 30 years, right? But that's not the point. They're all trying to do driverless cars. By pooling the resources on their data, they all can achieve that goal faster, all of them at the same time, which is economically sensible for them. Healthcare, I mentioned that very quickly. But the more data you have accessible for AI healthcare startups, well, the better the models are going to be. The faster we can spot cancer in a very early stage, the better we can treat it. It's true for Parkinson's disease. It's true for, as I mentioned, cancer and all kind of diseases. And this is the future of healthcare, is like being very early in that. But we can only do it if we manage to get the data from the hospitals and about the patients to the proper AI startups. And we're working on that to make that possible, and obviously respecting the privacy and the new regulations and laws that are happening in the EU. So now I'm going to go, just to finish for 2 minutes, a bit more like futuristic, if you want, right? So if that doesn't really talk to you, it's fine. You can ask me questions afterwards or something. Well, you can imagine an ocean service. So a service on Ocean Protocol where competing models, machine learning models, right, deep learning models, AI models, if you want, they compete to gain a contract with a company that wants one of the questions answered. So for example, you're a company and you're like, okay, I want to know, I have all this data and I want to know what is the best way of routing my ship under like in Europe or something like that. Well, then you provide this kind of like competition, and then like different machine learning models will like compete on this data set, trying to get to the most accurate answer. And then, Ocean Protocol via an Oracle or another third-party service would basically be like, this is the best one, and the best one would be rewarded by tokens. So there will be this competition to make the best algorithms and the best models. Kind of a little bit symmetric to that, the opposite, models competing for data. So there's a quote from Brad Burnham that I love. Nowadays, search has been inverted. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people were searching for products, right? You Google searching for products. Now it's products searching and competing for people. They want your money. They want to send you an ad. So they're competing for your personal data. So search, the whole concept of search has been inverted. Well, now you can imagine this kind of a concept where, as you personal people, you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna upload my personal data. I want to leverage it. I want to make money out of it, and then the different companies will compete to have access to your data. And you will pick one, or maybe one that is going to be using your data for something you like or something, and you will be rewarding them with tokens. So you can imagine all those different services on Ocean Protocol that will be allowing AI companies to have access to more data. They will be allowing companies that have a lot of data to make money out of this data that they're not using at all. So the conclusion is that AI is siloed, AI services are siloed, data is siloed nowadays. We can change that. We can change that with with new incentives for people to share, for people to curate, for people to discover new data sets and use it. We can democratize access to AI data and services. So this is my email. If you have any questions, you can email me. It's a very easy one, john@oceanprotocol.com. And if you are in this audience, a company that has a lot of data and you're interested, maybe talking to us, partnering with us at one point, feel free to email me. Thank you very much.